welcome to Back Alley Chat. Nice to have you all here today. I have a very special episode that I am so excited about. Today we're going to be sitting down with Jeff Bowman. He is a Michigan native, and he is a person who grew up in real poverty. His mom struggled with alcoholism, and really him and his siblings were left to fend for themselves. And despite all these odds, Jeff managed to move to Florida, put himself through school, earning a master's in business and a bachelor's in engineering. And it was during his time down here in Florida going to school that he discovered Kava all the way back in his college days. And Kava, if you guys don't know, it's a plant that has calming properties that has been used by the South Pacific Islanders for centuries. And Jeff saw a real opportunity and to create a place where people could gather and socialize without the pressure of alcohol, a substance that obviously had personally really affected his life. So with his student loan money, he opened up the first ever Kava bar in the mainland United States, which has since become a thriving business, and he's become one of the largest wholesalers of Kava in the country. I want to do a disclaimer in the beginning of this video. So we're going to talk about his journey from Michigan to the jungle. But, Kratom. We're not going to talk about Kava, but we're also going to be talking about Kratom and its safety as well, and new regulations that are currently being explored by the state of Florida. Before we dive into today's episode, which includes conversations about, like I said, Kava and Kratom, I want to make it very clear that this episode is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please do not make any decisions in your life based off of this video. Do your own research. Everybody is different, and what works for one person may not work for another. Please use your best judgment and take responsibility for your own personal health. And with all that being said, hey, Bowman.
How you doing, Allie?
Nice to have you here today.
Thanks for inviting me.
I'm so excited. You know, this is the kind of content that I've always been happy to put out. I feel like on all the other podcasts that are similar to mine, you're never going to have a guest like this. And so I'm really proud about that. And that's why you guys subscribe. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe right now. Anyway, so Bowman, tell me a little bit about where you're from and what it was like growing up. You're from Michigan, but you're not like from Detroit, right?
I was born in Detroit, but I grew up mostly in rural Michigan, in Armada, Michigan.
Okay.
Population about 1,200.
Wow.
One blinking red light. Lots of farms, country people.
Uh-huh. What was that like growing up there?
Pretty boring most of the time.
Yeah.
Hanging out in the forest, building forts, fishing, hunting.
Uh-huh.
Just doing country boy stuff most of the time.
That's awesome. And so tell me, because, when you were telling me about the reason why you opened the Kava bar, you made a point that, alcohol had affected your family in such a way that you wanted a place where people could hang out and not have to drink alcohol to hang out at a place at night. So tell me a little bit about your experience growing up with your mom and kind of how that led you down the path to Florida.
Well, my mom was an alcoholic. She was a violent alcoholic and beat us for no reason frequently, my brother and I. And it was rough. It was a very rough childhood. I lost most of my childhood to alcoholism, not having a good childhood, not having food, not having a clean house, not having things that normal kids have, and just made the best of it. Mm-hmm. And it was hard. It wasn't easy.
Yeah. Did your mom ever get sober, or?
My mom went to rehab 3 times. She had 3 DUIs. She was sent to Sacred Heart Rehabilitation Center in Detroit for 1 year lockup rehab where she couldn't leave. And she never was able to get sober. She eventually died from her alcoholism, from cirrhosis of her liver. She just drank herself to death. Wow.
And when you were a kid, did you ever have to go to Al-Anon or do any of... were you still living with her when she went to rehab, or?
Things didn't go well, and I ended up having to go live with my father because of it. And my mother went to rehab after I had moved in with my father, but my little brother was still in the house with her. Mm. And she tried to go. My father forced me to go to Al-Anon and Alateen to try to understand my mother's disease. And I probably spent hundreds of hours in Al-Anon, Alateen rooms trying to understand my mother's addiction and disease and, how it affected her and how it was affecting my life. So I had a pretty good grasp on what was going on with recovery.
Mm-hmm. Did you find those meetings helpful?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Still to this day, I still look back on it and, I do deal with a lot of people in recovery in the Kava bar business. Mm-hmm. So it does help me in even today with understanding addiction and recovery, even though I'm not in recovery or an addict.
How did you decide to move to Florida? Did you know somebody down here or what?
No, I didn't know anything. I just didn't want to live in the snow anymore. I got sick and tired of living in the cold and the snow. And I found an engineering school as far south as I could go that would accept me. That happened to be Florida Atlantic University here in Boca Raton.
Okay.
And I signed up to get a Bachelor of Science in Ocean Engineering and just moved here. Didn't know anybody, didn't have a job, didn't have a place to live, never been here, just showed up and figured it out.
What did you want to do with your ocean engineering degree?
I didn't really know. I just wanted to get an engineering degree because my grandfather was an engineer, and my father always wanted me to go to engineering school because he knew I was capable of doing it. So I just followed through with it, and I was kind of going to school for my father more than myself. I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I just didn't want to live in the snow, and I didn't want to be poor.
So at this time that you were going to FAU, is that when you started to work doing the fish tanks?
Yeah, I was going to school at FAU after I graduated with my ocean engineering degree. I started working for a company here in Boca Raton, building very large aquariums for very wealthy people and maintaining them. And a fisherman from the South Pacific came to visit our company, and he brought some kava with him to share with everybody that worked there. And I was the only person that worked there that was interested in it. Everybody thought it was disgusting and weird. And I felt the effect of it very quickly, and I was very intrigued by it from the first day I ever tried it.
Explain to us, what is the effect like for the people that haven't tried it before?
Kava has a very relaxing effect. Almost all kavas do, if you take the right amount of it. And it has a euphoric component. You have a euphoric type of effect, but you also have a body type of effect, a muscle relaxer type of effect as well, with some other types of kava. So it kind of depends on which kava you're drinking as to which type of effect that you get.
And how long have you been in the kava world at this, like now, today?
23 years.
Wow.
I've been drinking kava, importing kava, selling kava.
That's a long time.
Yeah,
that
it
is
is
way before many people had even heard of what it is.
For sure.
So you moved to Florida. Now you also got a master's degree in business.
Yeah, when we had the idea to open the first kava bar in America, we were all engineers and realized very quickly that none of us knew how to do accounting or financial management or marketing. So I quickly went back to FAU and obtained an MBA in 1 year flat.
Wow.
And used it to do my business plans, my marketing plans. And I had a lot of help from the students and the professors at FAU. They were very encouraging. And that's how I got my business plan to fruition, was going.
That's so cool. So, and many of you might not know this story. So I've been, Bowman will tell you, I was against going to school for 100,000 years. He used to tell me that I should go and start going to class. And I would say, no, I don't want to do that. I don't think I need to do that. Why can't I learn it on the internet? And finally, Bowman got me to go sign up for classes, and it's been a wrap ever since then. I can't thank you enough because you joke about it all the time with me now. If only 22-year-old Allie could hear you now.
For sure.
And so I know education is such a big deal for you because not only have you helped me start going to college, and you know your wife Diane has come over and made sure I pass all my math classes and all of that stuff, but you've done that for a lot of individuals, so you feel very strongly about education. You feel like it really obviously helped you with your kava bar, right?
That's how I got out of my mess in life. That's it. I went to college and got educated, and I was able to figure out a way out of my poverty that I was born into.
Yeah, because you came down here with nothing. You're fixing fish tanks. That's a hard one to say. And then someone gives you kava for the first time, some guy from the Pacific Islands. You try it. You think it's interesting. Everyone else thinks it's disgusting. And so then you come up with this idea for a kava bar. Had you ever been to a kava bar at that point?
No, back then in 2002 or 2001, there was barely any internet. You know, we didn't have Google. We didn't have all the search engines that we have now. So there really wasn't any even information online. Like I couldn't even picture what a kava bar looked like in the South Pacific until I physically went there.
Wow. And how long after you opened your kava bar did you actually make your first trip to the jungle?
It was a little under 2 years.
Oh, that's fast.
Yeah, I had to go because we ran out of supply. The the supply line that my partners had set up fell through, and they were unable to continue to get us kava. And rather than closing and losing all of my money that I had to pay back, I decided to take out a credit card and maxed out the credit card buying tickets to the South Pacific, and just went there and tried to find a supplier and tried to figure out how I could get kava so we didn't go out of business.
I can't imagine in 2002 or 4 jumping on a plane, again, still no internet really back then, to a foreign little island country across the world with people that they don't speak our language, right?
Some of them do. They speak Bishlama in Vanuatu, but a lot of them speak English.
Okay.
A lot of them, there's a lot of English-speaking people there.
So you arrived to the island, and what do you do from there?
I had my employee Ken Hoyumpa with me, who's now the owner of Grassroots Kava Houses. They have 3 locations here in Florida. And we stayed there for a month, and we did everything we could to try to find supply. We went all the way to Pentecost Island in Vanuatu, which is a very remote area, and tried to figure out how to get kava off that island. And it was difficult. There's no infrastructure, there's no roads, there's no electricity, there's no running water, there's nothing there. So it was very, very difficult. And it wasn't until about 3 days before we were due to come home that we found somebody who could actually supply us. And it's still my supplier to this day. I was their very first customer, and now they own the largest kava processing facility in the world.
Wow. That's unbelievable. And so kava grows naturally there, or?
Yeah, kava grows in Vanuatu. They have over 120 varieties of kava there in Vanuatu. Wow. And the botanists believe that's where the plant originated, just because of the sheer number of cultivars that exist in Vanuatu. The Solomon Islands and Fiji also have kava right nearby, but they have they have a lot less kava cultivars than Vanuatu. And Vanuatu has the best kava in the world. There's no question about that.
Unbelievable. So, and how long? Because it takes a while for a kava plant to actually grow and to maturity, right?
It takes 5 to 7 years for the best kava in Vanuatu. They don't really harvest kava with less than 5 years in Vanuatu or export it. So it's very mature at that age. A lot of other countries, they'll harvest kava at 3 years and send it, but it just doesn't have the kava lactone content that's good for premium kava.
And kava lactone is basically one of the properties of kava that allows you to feel the effects.
Yeah, there's 6 major kava lactones that give you the effects of kava, and they come in varying amounts, and those varying amounts determine what the effect is of kava, whether it's more euphoric or body-like. So there is a difference between good kava and not good kava.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I heard of the 2-day kava, or is that a
2-day
thing?
kava is just a type of kava that it doesn't have kavain or dihydrokavain as the primary 2 first lactones in the composition. And it also has higher amounts of flavocavain in it, which really aren't good for you. They're not going to kill you, but you want to try to limit the amount of flavocavain that you consume.
And I guess back to the supplier and your supply, I guess it's important to explain to people the importance of knowing where your kava and other things that you buy, period, are sourced from, right?
Yeah, the FDA is very picky about that. The dietary supplement industry is regulated by the FDA, and they do demand traceability. They do demand that our products that we sell are able to be traced back all the way to a single farm, so that if somebody happens to get sick from something, from a contaminant, that it's traceable back to the source, so they can have a recall, and anyone that bought kava from that area or that supplier knows that the products aren't safe, so they can recall them.
It must be complicated working with the FDA or having to deal with, because I know you've had shipments come in that get stalled. And can you tell us some of the things that you have to overcome dealing with kava, getting it so far away, shipping it through customs? Like, what has that been like?
It's just a risk in general, because we have to put it on boats or planes. All of it's completely uninsured. There is no insurance for perishable goods. You can get it. It just costs so much it'll devalue the product to a point where it's not worth selling it. But when it comes into the United States, it has to go through Homeland Security. It has to go through customs. USDA sometimes wants to take a look at it. The FDA always wants to look at it. Every shipment that we get has to be cleared through the FDA. And I've been doing it so long now, they mostly electronically clear our shipments because they know they're clean. But we also have regulation of the Florida Department of Agriculture here in Florida. They oversee the dietary supplement industry in the state of Florida. So they also inspect our facilities as well as the FDA.
Wow. So you're a kid from Michigan, grow up in legit poverty, decide I'm going to go to school in Florida, fly down here. Then you open a Kava bar. 2 years later, you're wandering around the jungle trying to find Kava to sell at the Kava bar. And now, 20 plus years later, you are one of the largest distributors of Kava in the country. I mean, when you first opened the Knock, that was the only Kava bar in the United States, right?
That was the only Kava bar in the United States for at least a year. And then another one opened in West Palm Beach. And then another one opened in Fort Lauderdale. Then one opened in Delray. But 5 years in, we only had 3 or 4 Kava bars in the whole country.
Wow. How many are there now? Do you know?
Oh, last I checked, there was 323 Kava bars in the United States and over 200 in the state of Florida alone.
Wow. That's Florida for you. Kava is definitely a Florida thing for sure, but it's definitely growing all over the place. And so you're now able to, help all these Kava bars get their supply, make sure that they have good Kava that's decent. Like I have drinking Kava before that was just like instant, basically. What is the difference between instant Kava and this kind of Kava that you have here?
Well, it depends. True instant, like I sell, is dehydrated green Kava juice. In Vanuatu, they drink green Kava. They harvest the plant, and while it's still alive and fresh, they basically juice the plant like you would a carrot, and they juice the Kava juice out of the roots, and sometimes they add water to it, sometimes they don't. It depends on what they're up to for the day, but it's very strong. And we take that green Kava juice in Vanuatu and we dehydrate it and micronize it. And that's true instant Kava. That's the real instant Kava. Some people just take Kava root and grind it very finely and give it to people to put in their water and stir it up. But it's nothing more than just Kava root that's been ground very fine. That isn't real instant Kava. That's just micronized Kava. People don't know the difference. Or people will take Kava that they've made from dried Kava, which is here in this bottle. That's Kava made from dried root. And they'll dehydrate that instead of dehydrating the green juice and make an instant product out of that. And the traditional Kava is basically just the Kava root soaked in water, and then we strain it through a nylon food-grade strainer and basically throw the Kava root out when we're done and keep the juice and drink it. It's kind of like a tea, I guess.
Yeah, so the Kava is the root of a pepper plant. So right?
Yeah, it's Piper methysticum. Its closest relative is Piper nigrum, which is black pepper that we put on our food. So it is in the pepper family.
And you can kind of taste it sometimes, like a peppery.
A lot of Kava has peppery taste to it, but there are some other types of Kava that taste chocolatey or nutty or grassy. It just depends on the cultivar of Kava that you're consuming.
Most of them taste very earthy, though.
Yeah, they do, because they are in the ground 5 years. They do absorb a lot of minerals from the earth, and they do taste rather earthy.
So your experience owning a Kava bar, I'm sure, has been really interesting. I want to know, did it grow quickly, or did it take some time for people in Boca to find out about the Kava bar when you first opened it, and how did that grow for you?
Well, when we first opened, there was nobody was interested in drinking it but high school kids. So I thought for sure I was getting arrested many times when I'd look around and see 100 kids there. And never had a problem, never had an angry parent, never had the police show up. Everybody behaved, and I never had any trouble like that. But for the first 5 years, the growth was very slow, and there was many times I was sitting around wondering what the hell I was doing with an advanced engineering degree and an MBA. Making $30,000 a year, like not being able to pay my bills. Like I was thinking I made some poor decisions in life for quite some time, but perseverance paid off in the end.
So, and one thing I wanted to touch on that I know is a little bit controversial to some people. I mean, Kratom. So you sell Kratom at your Kava bar, right?
We do. Every Kava bar in the country basically sells Kratom. If you don't sell Kratom, you're not going to make it in this industry.
Yeah, it's hard money-wise, right?
Yeah, you won't survive financially. It's become a necessity at this point.
And how has that changed the kind of people that come to the Kava bar? Have you seen a difference in the kind of patrons that you have that come in? Or
I have over the years. I've learned my lessons on which type of kratom to sell and which not to sell. I choose not to sell really super strong kratom extracts. I also don't sell red vein kratom. I don't think there's a space in the recreational industry for selling red vein kratom. It's just my personal opinion. But it does bring a different type of clientele, people that are looking more to be medicated than to be social or recreational. And those aren't my customers. I prefer to focus on the Kava people. Kava people are much more positive, and Kava's not addictive, so I don't end up with a bunch of people that are junked out on Kava.
yeah. Because for sure, and I think kratom. I'm glad it's legal, and I hope it continues to be legal. I went on a whole rant about banning stuff last week, and I stick by that because I feel like every time we ban something, something worse comes out. And for kratom, there's many people who utilize it who don't want to be on their pain pills, or for a myriad of reasons. But if you use it every day, eventually you're going to become dependent on it.
100%. Kratom is physically and psychologically addictive, both. You do have to be careful with it. You just have to, especially if you're somebody who has a tendency to opiate addiction. Like
If you love Oxycontin, maybe stay away.
I wouldn't touch it. It's not a good idea. It's a slippery slope for
Yeah.
people that are really struggling with recovery with opiates. Kava, not really a problem, but still people do. Even if they're in recovery, I tell people to make sure they're very solid in their recovery before they try messing with Kava or kratom. They should get their head straight and not end up like my mother.
Yeah, for sure. So so for a long time, people were trying to ban kratom. There was a lot of people who they were protesting and going to the governor and doing all these things. And I think it got kind of close once or twice. At least a bill was written or something like that. But now they have a new bill that was just brought to the Florida legislative, whatever you want to call it. Can you tell us a little bit about what they're trying to do with kratom and how they're trying to regulate it?
Yeah, the DEA failed. They tried making kratom a Schedule 1 narcotic, and they didn't really have any proof that it was harming society or that it was killing people. So that ultimately failed because of that. There is a lack of safety studies on kratom as well, so there's no real safe usage of kratom as far as the FDA or DEA are concerned. But they tried to ban it. It failed, and now state of Florida and a lot of other states are introducing Kratom Consumer Protection Acts.
Okay.
And what they're doing is they're trying to make it safe as possible for people if they are going to consume it. And they're going to, Senate Bill 136 is coming through in Florida, probably going to get signed by Governor DeSantis soon. And it will go into effect July 1st at the moment. But that's going to make it so you can't sell kratom to anyone under the age of 21. It'll be a misdemeanor level 2 if you get caught doing that. You'll go to jail. And they're going to start forcing processors, manufacturers to send the kratom in for lab testing. And then you have to send those lab tests to the state of Florida. And they're going to look at them and determine whether or not the kratom you're selling is safe to be consumed, and they're probably going to issue some type of a license like they did with the CBD, is my guess, for Kava bars or head shops or whoever else is selling it, to prove that they have sent their samples to a lab, had them tested in the state of Florida, looked at them. Right now, they're only requiring that we do that once a year. That loophole is going to be a problem. I can see that. They're going to have to tighten that up. But it's a good start for sure to make sure it's safe. They're not going to allow any synthetic kratom. There's a lot of synthetic
Is
kratom.
there?
Oh, there's a lot of synthetic
Really?
kratom.
So
around.
the stuff people buy at the gas stations or
Could
what
be
is
synthetic. It's it's just powder. Most of it's made in China. And
Really?
they take the alkaloids of the kratom plant that occur naturally, and they've synthesized them.
Oh no.
And they're just making the synthetic kratom at this point because it's very hard to get, and to get into the United States, it's very difficult to get into the country. There's a red import alert from the FDA against kratom, so we're not supposed to be really importing it, but it comes through anyway. Like we keep importing it, and they just can't stop it. But it's they're trying to figure out a way to make it more safe than it is, but with all legislation, it starts out with a good intent, and very quickly it's probably going to become overregulated and be too difficult to sell.
Yeah, that will be just, my big thing is the moment we ban one thing, another thing takes its place. Like you said, they came up with synthetic kratom. If they came up with that, all they got to do is zhuzh it a little bit, make it something else, and then sell it at the same thing.
Well, the drug dealers will never stop selling it. That's what'll happen. It'll go into the black market, and you'll just have a bunch of people selling unregulated product again. And now the state isn't collecting any sales tax. There's no safety. People got to start hanging out with sketchy drug dealers to get their product rather than going into a retail store that has a license and pays taxes and has food safety standards. And it's not really good if they decide to just ban it. It's better to regulate it for sure.
Is there any way a person can find out if the kratom they're buying is pure or anything like that?
Right now, the only thing you could do is send it to a laboratory to have it tested. It's about $500 per test to get it tested. So people aren't going to do that. And that's why a lot of the Kava bars, gas stations, convenience stores, they're not sending anything in for testing, most of them. It's just too expensive to keep up with it. I've always tested all of my products, my Kava and my Kratom, and I have lab reports available if anybody ever asks. No one does. Very few people ever ask for a lab report. And if I gave you one, you'd look at it and say, what the hell is this? You wouldn't even know what you're looking at. So it's they're trying to figure out a solution, but there's not really any other safe way than relying on the processors or manufacturers, the lab tests that they provide. That's pretty much it at the moment.
Right. So people get a license if they sell CBD?
Yeah, now there's a Department of Agriculture license if you sell CBD products.
So that includes a Delta 8 and all that stuff?
I don't think it includes Delta 8. Delta 8's very gray area.
I know, it's so interesting to me. I think it's really interesting because it's like not even Delta 8. I see them selling Delta 9 at the store.
Yeah, there was
regular pot.
There was just a guy arrested in Boca selling Delta 9 yesterday. I saw it in the Boca News now.
At a store?
At a convenience store, yeah. He was selling high schoolers Delta 9 vapes, and they sent an undercover in there and arrested him.
Because they were under the age of 18.
Well, I think it's just because the guy's selling illegal drugs. Delta 9 THC is federally Schedule I narcotic.
Right. Yeah. Wow. That is crazy, because my dad told me that he bought Delta 9 from the store. And I said, no, that's impossible. That's regular pot, Dad.
No, it's happening.
Yeah, it's happening.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting, the Farm Bill. I also wonder what's going to happen to that because, I'm sure that industry could take a little regulation. I'm sure it wouldn't be the worst thing ever, but I think it seems not to be the worst thing in the world to have very weak pot or CBD available to people who want to utilize it. I was telling someone the other day, you never go to the doctor and the doctor has never said, I'm going to prescribe you 2 gallons of vodka a week.
Yeah.
Like, I've never heard that in my life. So how is that legal and all these other things, yet, weed is still a Schedule I and they want to make Kratom a Schedule I. Kava has never been up for any bans or anything like that, right?
It is banned in a couple of countries. I think Singapore, they ban everything, though. And it was considered a narcotic in Australia until about a year ago, and now they're openly allowing importation of Kava back into Australia again. And my supplier is working on building a Kava bar in Australia. They're thinking about it anyway, so we'll see. But they're starting the Kava bar industry in Australia now, finally 20 years later.
Australia is pretty close to Vanuatu, isn't it? I'm not a geographic...
just a few hours flight. It's definitely not far. From there. The people that supply me with my Kava are Australian.
Okay.
They're Australian expats that live in Vanuatu. They run the factory there.
So I'm going to do benefits and risks, I guess, of both Kava, and then we'll do Kratom. So what are the benefits that a person might get from utilizing Kava?
Well, Kava is it's for relaxing. It slows you down. You're not really allowed to make health claims with Kava. You can't cure or treat any disease, but there is a lot of literature online that people take Kava for anxiety, stress, insomnia, depression. There is quite a bit of information about that. But most people that come to the Kava bar, they come there for several reasons. They come there for recreational purposes because they like the effect of the Kava, and it's not addictive, and it's safer than alcohol or drugs. People also come there for social reasons, to see their friends and socialize. And they also come there for medicinal reasons because they don't want to take a bunch of pharmaceuticals. So they take Kava for stress, anxiety, insomnia, depression. And, they also go to Whole Foods. You can buy capsules at Whole Foods or GNC or other nutrition stores of Kava. They don't really work as well as the traditional beverage, but they could offer somebody some relief.
Yeah, when I was working at this facility, I think I've told you in the past, I was like what do you call it when it's like all natural stuff, like like an all natural rehab place. And they would send the clients home with a mix of valerian root and kava to help them sleep at night if they were having issues sleeping. They only did, herbs and stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever. What is that called? What is it called? I don't know. Whatever. It'll come to me in a second. So are there any risks to kava? I know that people have talked about liver issues or...
There was some concern about liver issues that were debunked back in the early 2000s. The World Health Organization went out and spent millions of dollars and drew people's blood out in the jungles of Vanuatu and Fiji. Yeah, they did.
What?
Yeah, they had to try to figure out what was going on because people were legitimately getting sick in Europe.
Wow.
And what they found out was some of these larger pharmaceutical companies wanted to harness the anti-anxiety, antidepressant properties of the kava, and they started extracting the kava lactones and concentrating them on a very concentrated basis and making capsules or tinctures out of them and giving them to people. And what they found out was that some of those people, it harmed their liver. But some of these people, if you go back and look at the report, they already had a history of abusing alcohol or abusing pills. They already had liver problems. They weren't the healthiest of people, some of the participants in these trials. And some people did end up with damaged livers. And what the World Health Organization concluded in short was that the kava pills, when the kava is extracted and concentrated at that level, the human liver has a very hard time breaking it down, even a healthy liver. So you need to use aqueous extract, water extract of kava, the traditional way they prepare it. And as long as you're using the right type of kava and it's clean and it has water in it, it buffers the liver, and it's not a problem for your body to break it down any more than coffee or tea or Coca-Cola or anything else we consume that the body has to break down.
Cool. And is there any other risk that's ever been associated with kava?
I mean, if you drink too much kava, you can stumble around a little bit. There is a muscle relaxer in kava, and it can make your legs a little noodly. It can make your vision go double sometimes if you drink way too much, but it wears off pretty fast. No one's ever crashed their car or gotten a ticket for DUI in the United States for kava. So in 20 years, that's a bonus.
That's a bonus.
Considering
that's
all
good.
the people that have consumed too much kava in this country at one time or another.
Right.
It doesn't impair your mental faculties, so you're still aware, and you know if you've drank too much and you can't drive that you shouldn't drive.
Right. Meaning you also won't wake up next to someone who...
But the only real things that I could see are a problem are you can get dry skin from drinking kava, and
is that because it's a diuretic?
It's a diuretic, but it also absorbs. There's natural plant oils in the kava that absorb the oil from your sebaceous glands and basically rob your sebaceous glands of the oil and just dry your skin out.
Oh wow!
Some people get styes sometimes from it, just dry skin in general, but. People become lethargic from drinking too much kava, kind of lazy. That's really the biggest problem with it, I think, more than anything. And people do spend their money on it when they should be spending their money on other things, right. Just like any other substance.
Yeah, and I would say that's a huge, a much larger issue with the kratom since it's much more expensive than the kava. And, a lot of people do become dependent on it, so they end up spending their paycheck. A lot of people reach out to me about the kratom, and I say, it's obviously addictive. I think the thing it's going to hurt most is your bank account.
Yeah. For sure.
So I guess some of the, if you want to call a benefit of kratom, would be the properties of pain relief.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the best medical use for kratom is people use it medically. People that have arthritis or, joint pain or something, people do use it for back pain. It does work well for pain management. You do get a tolerance to it very rapidly, just like opiates, though. So It's
Because it is a mu opioid. It hits your mu opioid receptors, right? Which
sure.
is just like morphine.
yeah.
So there's not a difference there. The one thing I also see, it can be beneficial if an individual is really having a hard time entering detox. It can take away some of those withdrawals that you may feel from coming off of regular drugs, but it ain't going to take them away completely, first
No.
of all. And there's a high likelihood that you're just going to switch out one for another.
That's exactly what happens a lot of times.
Yeah, you see that a lot at the Kava bar? Or?
Yeah, if people don't have some type of a tapering plan to take less and less of it as they're going on, they will end up just taking more and more and more of it. And eventually, Kratom's quite expensive now. Back in the day, it was really cheap, but now it's starting to get quite expensive. And, when you get to the point where you're spending $100 or $200 on Kratom, a lot of people, it's cheaper just to go buy, opiates. Fentanyl is cheap. Heroin's cheap. And I think people that are prone to opiate addiction, that's what ends up happening to them. And a lot of times if they're not able to manage it themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And the risks, I guess we've already went over the risks of Kratom being that you can get dependent on it. I haven't really heard of too many deaths. The deaths and if you guys want to know more about Kratom, I made a whole video on it on my YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube and if you're on listening just on Spotify or any of the podcast places, you can go on my YouTube channel. And I made a pretty in-depth video about Kratom there and some of the deaths that happened. But a lot of that was due to bad regulations and people I think they were putting the stuff from tramadol into the Kratom, basically. And that caused a bunch of deaths.
Yeah, I don't think there's been any deaths from Kratom. There are people who have died that have Kratom in their system, and there are some coroners that are writing, death by Kratom. But as far as I know, Kratom doesn't really have a toxicity. There's some studies from the University of Florida, I believe, that have proven that. And I personally don't believe that anyone has died from Kratom. To die from Kratom, it probably does have some type of toxicity at some point, but I think well before you reach the point of Kratom toxicity, you would just vomit and get sick and vomit it all up. Like, it is not easy to consume that much Kratom. Like, you will get nauseous and get sick. It does make people pretty ill frequently.
For sure. So I went on my Instagram and I put that we were doing a little thing about Kava and Kratom to see if anyone had any questions. So I'm going to check to see what they answered. All right. Let's see what we got here. All right. Got some questions. Let me turn off my Wi-Fi. As an ex-opioid addict, do you believe Kratom is a better method to help you get clean?
I don't know if it's a better method. Me personally, I think if somebody's really having that type of a problem, it's better off that they seek professional help and go to a detox and go to a rehab and try to not self-medicate.
Right.
It's probably the best thing. It's a very slippery slope with Kratom, and I've just seen in my own life. I have an older brother who died from opiates. He came home from Vietnam as a military police officer, and like a lot of people that came home from Vietnam, he was addicted to heroin, and he ended up getting clean and living a great life. And he ended up taking some type of a lap band surgery because he was gaining too much weight. The doctors prescribed him opiates, and he went off the deep end and just started doing them again. And he ended up dead from methadone. He overdosed on methadone and died. So I do have experience on the other side of the coin with Kratom and opiate addiction as well. My brother was a heroin addict that died from opiates. So I personally don't think it's a good idea to try to self-medicate or get yourself off of drugs. And if you eventually get yourself off of the opiates, it's probably not a good idea to start doing Kratom. You're just going to end up right back where you were with another habit with Kratom. You're better off to just stay far away from it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I mean, if going to a hospital or talking to some kind of addiction professional is seriously not an option, I would still go on the internet and find a support group and just ask people, because a lot of the hospitals nowadays you can go in, but they're going to give you Suboxone, which is much stronger than Kratom.
For sure.
So do your own research on that. I guess this is an interesting question. Someone said, how much Kratom is in some of the popular extracts?
It really depends. No one really knows. They say how many milligrams of metragonine or 7-OH metragonine are in there, but if you lab test some of these samples, it varies frequently. Nothing is really standardized. That's part of the problem with the industry. A lot of these extracts, they vary on the standardization. They're not using PhD chemical engineers to make this stuff. They're making it in half-ass labs, some of them. Like it's very easy now to go on the internet and order very professional-looking packaging from China and have it sent here, and you can look like you have a multi-million-dollar company and you're making stuff in your bathtub. You know, and a lot of the processors are just making stuff in their garage at home, not following any of the FDA CGMP rules, regulations, and that's the biggest problem with the dietary supplement industry in general, is that a lot of the dietary supplements that are being sold, including Kava and Kratom, aren't what they say they are, and it's very difficult to know who's telling the truth and who's not unless you want to spend a lot of money and send it to the lab yourself and have it tested. You just got to trust whatever your supplier says is in it.
And someone said something about somebody just started smoking Kratom. I think that sounds abnormal.
I've never heard of that. I've never heard of it.
That's a weird one. My friend recently told me they started smoking it in small doses. Should I be concerned? Yes, I'd be very concerned about your friend at this point. And there's other ones about misconceptions about using it every day, which I think we definitely spoke about. And so I think that's awesome. So you brought, so this is the root.
Yeah, that's Kava root. That's the two basic parts of the plant. The top one is what's called the basal stump. That's 70 to 75% of the plant.
It looks like a mushroom.
Yeah, it looks like a giant potato, basically. When they dry it out and cut it like that, they call them chips because they kind of look like potato chips. But that's 75 to 70% of the plant is the basal stump. Wow. It has about a 5% kava lactone content in 5-year-old kava. Noble kava. Noble kava is the type of kava you want to consume as opposed to 2-day kava.
Okay.
And then the bottom there, that's the lateral roots. The lateral roots of the kava are 25 to 30% of the plant generally on noble kava plants. And the lateral roots end up getting more than double the amount of kava lactone in them at 5 to 7 years. Oh. So the lateral roots that I sell, they're around 11% kava lactone content, which is about as high as it gets. Noble kava doesn't get much stronger than that. So
do you chop this up before you put it in the water? Or are you guys?
Yeah. Those are just the roots, so I could show you what it looks like. We grind it into a finely ground powder that's an aggregate powder between 60 and 130 microns in size. Wow. And there's some of the parts of the kava, inside of kava root, you have.
So it looks like this?
Yeah, that's the powder. You can see it through the window there. It's very finely ground.
Yeah.
Those are some bags that I sell from my online business. And the powder generally, kava consists of cellulose fiber, inactive fibers, root inside of it because it is woody. There is starch inside of kava. There are kava lactones and some terpenes that give you the scent and the taste.
Is there an amount of calories that are in it?
Yeah, there's some calories in there. We don't really have to put that on there because the FDA doesn't require it because kava, this is a dietary supplement, and dietary supplements don't require caloric intake on the labeling. But I think a shell of kava, the last time I looked, had about 15 calories in it.
That's not too bad.
Not too much.
No.
And most of it is from carbohydrates and starch that are in the kava.
Right.
But the goal with kava is the kava that we sell has the inactive fibers removed. It has a lot of the cellulose fibers removed because that really tears up your gut. The human stomach can't digest cellulose.
Learned that in biology class. Thank you, Bowman.
So some people, when they consume kava, if it's not strained well, they get a upset stomach or cramps in their stomach because of it. We do the best we can to remove that before we put it in the bag.
So we're going to wrapping up here. I was wondering, because you see a lot of obviously you're paying attention. You're super knowledgeable on all things Kava and Kratom. Do you see any other drug trends coming through? Because I know a long time ago, like when spice first made its way to South Florida, there were these lists of chemicals that came out that a person could purchase from China, and that was the fentanyl and all this other stuff that was coming through. Have you seen anything like that, or where do you think we're headed with that kind of stuff?
I mean, these research chemicals are always going to be available. People like to get a buzz. People like to get high. That's the way that humans work ever since, people discovered chocolate in the jungle back in the day, all the way up to where we are today with research chemicals. People are always going to be consuming psychotropic, mind-altering substances. Just human beings have an interest in it, and they will never stop making them because there's always going to be a demand. There is some type of synthetic opiate that I just saw a couple of days ago that's starting to show up in extracts of kava that they're selling in head shops. I can't think of what the name of it is now, but it's already on the market. There's a product called Neptune's Fix that I saw that I wouldn't recommend consuming myself. But it's definitely, if they ban kratom particularly, they're just going to get flooded with a bunch of research chemicals that are analog opiates.
Right.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. I was watching this thing the other day because I try to stay up to date on all this stuff as well. And the guy was saying how this individual overdosed from a research chemical, and when he woke up, he was deaf.
Yeah, it's possible.
Oh my God.
That's the problem
Imagine
with these chemicals.
You take some random thing you bought on the internet thinking okay, I bought it off the internet. How bad could it be? And you can't hear it anymore.
I've had customers do that at the Kava bar and buy chemicals off the internet, research chemicals, and bring them into the Kava bar and start doing them. And we've ended up calling the ambulance. We've ended up with all types of problems from this over the years, over the last 20 years.
Wow.
So it's research chemicals definitely are not things to mess with. It's, at least kratom isn't a research chemical at this point.
Right, it's a plant.
Millions and millions and millions of people have done it safely, and nobody's dropping dead, dying. There's no ambulances. I've never had to call the ambulance because somebody consumed kratom.
Right.
Never happened.
And one more thing I want to touch on before we go is the kind of culture at the Kava bar. It's a very interesting place. It's a place where you go and you know everybody and everybody's talking. Nobody's wasted. Is that what it's like in the islands? And how do you feel that you have kind of built these communities now? Really, you're the one who started. You made it happen for all the other Kava bars that are still around. So what do you feel about the Kava community, and what do you hope for it and all that?
Well, in Vanuatu, Kava drinking is a way of life. In the villages in the remote islands, they have nakamals, where they're community centers where the men go to gather. Sorry, women, you're not allowed to drink Kava in nakamals in Vanuatu. It's taboo. But the Kava bars are a place where people trade money for Kava, so they're a little more progressive in Vanuatu now. I do see women in the Kava bars sometimes.
Okay.
But basically the same exact thing that is going on in a Kava bar in Vanuatu is happening here in the United States in the Kava bars, in most of them. People sitting around drinking Kava. Some people are having serious discussions. Some people are just sitting on their phone, not talking to anybody. Some people are laughing and joking with each other. It's just people sitting around having fun, trying to forget about their hard life for a few minutes and just unwind from the day. But basically the Kava culture that's happening here in the United States is modeled after what they do in Vanuatu, which is, sun goes down, people start drinking Kava, they go home, they eat some dinner, they go to sleep. It's basically, what they do there. It's what we do here.
Well, I've seen some of the Kava bars that you went to in Vanuatu, and they look much different than ours. It's like huts, basically.
They use whatever they have in building materials.
Yeah.
Corrugated tin, wood. It depends where you are, but most of them, they don't have a lot of money there. And I choose to hang out in the areas that have less resources. There are nicer Kava bars in the city. The Prime Minister of Vanuatu, for example, owns a Kava bar.
Oh, cool.
And it's very nice. It's beautiful, nice places to sit. But I personally like to go hang out in some areas of Vanuatu where they don't have any resources, and they're just using whatever building materials they can to build it. They're not always using soap and sanitizing.
Right.
Like it's not as sterile as an environment as we're used to here in the United States. There's no music playing. There's not a lot of bright lights. The kava bars there generally are all outdoors.
Wow. Is it hot? I'm assuming it's very hot there.
It's very hot, especially if you go there during rainy season. It's almost unbearable. It's much hotter than it is here in Florida.
Is there massive spiders?
There are spiders. There's spiders in the jungle. There are all types of venomous centipedes. There's all types of things that want to kill you in the ocean.
Wow.
Vanuatu is the most dangerous place on earth. If you look up on Google, what is the most dangerous country in the world, it will say Vanuatu.
What's it like? I have to just ask, what is it like when you go there for months at a time? You're living in the jungle, like sometimes in these like rooms with like a mosquito net around you.
Yeah.
What is that?
I don't know. I'm used to it. You know, I grew
Do you
up.
have a guide that takes you around, or how do you figure out your way in such a strange world? It's a third world country. It is nothing like Boca Raton at all.
Not
Okay,
at all.
it is a different planet. So.
I've been going there for 20 years, and I've made a lot of friends.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I can go to these places, and I just know my way around. I don't need anybody's help with anything. But I always have friends around with me. Everybody always wants to see me when I show up. You know, they're just as fascinated as you are about Vanuatu. They're just as fascinated about America. So they always want to see pictures on my phone and see videos and see what my kava bar looks like. And they're very curious as to who's drinking all this kava I'm buying. You know, I'm buying 40 to 50 tons of kava per year and distributing it. And they're very curious where it's going. So when I start showing them pictures of Americans drinking kava, they're very shocked that this many people are sitting here. They're also very shocked that this many women are sitting around drinking kava. They're very shocked at that. But it's the people there are lovely. Vanuatu is one of the nicest countries I've ever visited. The people there are fabulous. They're very helpful, very friendly. It's a very safe country. There's no concern about being robbed or anything. Like they're really wonderful people there. It's a very special country. But you do have to be careful for sure. There, you know, you can get sick. You can get eaten by a tiger shark. There are some. Oh yeah, there's a lot of things in the ocean that'll eat you in Vanuatu.
So did you bring this kava for us to drink?
Yeah, I brought some kava. This is black sand kava from the Nock. This one is Kalai kava. This is a single cultivar kava from Epi Island in Vanuatu that I like to drink.
Where's the black sand from?
It's a mixture of different types of kava. It's a blend. Most of it, I would say, comes from Santo Island at this point. But my processor does buy kava from Malakula and Pentecost and Epi, Tongoa. They buy kava from all the islands there. So it's noble kava. It's clean. It doesn't have bacteria. It's mature, not moldy, no fungus. So that's what our requirements are. So we don't care where the kava comes from as long as it fits our requirements of being mature and clean and safe.
Mm-hmm. And so we poured it into these shells here, and this is what you guys do at the kava bar,
and
right?
it's what they drink out of these same things in Vanuatu. If you go to the kava bar in Vanuatu,
like
absolutely.
Coconut shells?
Yeah, they drink out of coconut shells too, but they just get stolen. So the people there have now switched to using soup bowls like we use here. It's just the easiest thing.
And so you drink it together and you say bula.
In the Fiji Islands, they say bula when they drink kava. In Vanuatu, they don't really say anything, but it depends on where you are. In the north part of Vanuatu, they say malak. In the central part, they say maloku.
What does it mean?
It just means kava.
Oh.
They just say kava when they drink. In South Pentecost Island, Central Pentecost Island, they say sini. So it just depends on where you are in Vanuatu, but they don't really say anything in Vanuatu when they drink kava, only really in Fiji. But most of the kava bars say bula when they drink it at this point. That's the tradition we started with.
Cool.
Because we didn't know any better when we started. But we don't really drink any Fijian kava in our bar. It's all Vanuatu.
Well, bula, Bowman.
Bula, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. All right.
I forgot to bring you some apple juice. I thought about bringing apple juice, but I didn't.
It's not bad. It is an earthy taste, though. And a lot of people, you know, if I bring them to the kava bar, they'll say, oh, I can't, my mouth's a little numb, but it's very mild, you know?
Yeah, kava has kavain and dihydrokavain in it, which are topical anesthetics.
Is that like Novocaine? Like
yeah,
Kavain?
yeah. Anything
like
that ends in ain It is a topical anesthetic and will make your mouth numb. Kavain and dihydrokavain are the second strongest topical anesthetic from plants in nature behind cocaine.
Oh, wow.
So that's why your mouth gets numb. It's from the kavain.
So any last words that you would like to bestow on the listeners? I mean, Bowman, you have a really inspirational story. Whenever I have to write a paper in college about like a successful entrepreneur, because I'm in business school, I always choose, you and Diane. And because I just think it's amazing what you all have built. I mean, from coming where you came from to... I mean, you have cares in the world because you have a very large operation, but you can basically do whatever you want now.
At this point, yeah.
So is there anything you'd like to tell the listeners who are, on their journey to whatever they're doing with their lives? Any advice that you were given that...
I had a professor at FAU when I was getting my master's in business. I have an MBA in entrepreneurship and international business. I took a lot of entrepreneurship classes, and I had a professor there, Dr. Larry Klatt, and he once told us all that you keep doing something in life until it's not fun anymore. And when it's not fun anymore, you go find something else to do. And that always stuck with me. And, that's why I'm still in the Kava business, because it's still fun. It's still a fun business for me every single day. And I would say that rings true for anybody for any reason, including people, people when they start doing drugs or start drinking, it's fun. People are going out clubbing, they're going out with their friends, and, it starts out fun, and then the next thing you know, people are addicted to drugs, and they're, can't get off them, and shooting up dope, and then it isn't fun anymore.
Right.
And that's when you change your life and go to rehab or try to make your life fun again. So that's my advice. If when something's not fun anymore, go find something else to do.
I love that. I think that is awesome advice. Bowman, thank you so much for coming and spending some time on the Back Alley Chat podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
And thank you all for watching. Please comment down below if you have any questions or need any information. I'm going to try to put a bunch of stuff in the thing down below, the bio down below, so you can check there too. And next week we'll be back. This is the #1 fastest growing recovery and other things related podcast in America. Bowman, did you know that?
I didn't, but
Now
I hope everybody likes, shares, and subscribes for Allie.
Yes, please do. I love you all so much. If no one's told you today that they're proud of you, I am. And I will see you all next week. Bye.